I don't know about you guys, but I would definitely join the Body Improvement Club, even if I had really cool psychic powers. Come on. Now this version of Omurice is very simple, and that is because you should be able to make this very quickly. I'm going to start off with a small white onion for this, but feel free to use red, sweet, any onion that you really want. I like to make sure that my onion and eventually my carrots are all diced really well and diced the same size, so this way it does incorporate itself into the rice later. I like small dicing my onion like this and placing it to the side, so that way I have a lot left over for future recipes, so that way I can just knock a bunch of stuff out at once. Now I am using carrots for this like I mentioned earlier, and we do want to cut these up around the same size as the onions. Alternatively, you can use some fresh mushrooms, throw in some olives in there. You can really do whatever you want with Omurice, and typically I just use leftovers that I have laying around the house. But if you are using carrots, I like to make sure that I cut these up into around 3 inches in length and then slice these into about 1/8 of an inch worth of thickness before cutting these into little strips or julienne. These aren't proper julienne, but they're gonna get the job done. Once you have these cut into your julienne, make sure you do slice all of them at once just to make your life easier, so that way you can start working with small bunches of your carrots. Line them all up and begin slicing and chopping these into a smallish brunoise. Again, these aren't traditional juliennes or brunoises, but it'll get the job done because we're not really trying to measure this out. Once you have them all looking beautiful, place this into your container of choice, and as you can see, I do have a lot of this prep that I can use later for different recipes. Now I'm also adding in some ginger and garlic, which isn't usually common, but I do really like the flavor of it, and it's so easy to use, and I always have it laying around, so feel free to use any aromatics that you want. If you are using ginger and garlic, just make sure you do cut this up really nicely, making sure it is minced so this way you don't have giant chunks of ginger and garlic in your rice unless really you want it. Now the last thing is going to be green onions, but this is going to be a garnish. It won't actually be sauteed up with everything. Feel free to use fresh parsley, chives, or throw some cheddar cheese on it if you want to go wild. You do you know, it's your breakfast. Now I am also using chicken breast for this. I'm making sure that it is boneless and skinless to make my life easy, but feel free again to use some beef, pork, chicken thighs work really well here, but I like using chicken breast just because I have it on hand most of the time. I want to make sure that I cut these up into small 1/2 inch size pieces. You don't want these too big because you do want this to cook up fairly quickly. Now for the eggs. The eggs we're going to be... Stop it. Don't you juggle. Don't you juggle those eggs, Paul. I told you not. Dude, really? Now you gotta deal with this. See what's happening right now, dude? Come on. I am using 3 eggs for my omelet. Traditionally, you would only use around 2 eggs simply because it is actually easier to fold over later, which you're going to see me struggle with once we're actually cooking this omurice. But make sure once you whisk this together, you are whisking it enough to where the eggs run smooth and you don't have any big chunks of albumin hanging out. I like to pre-season my eggs with salt and black pepper, but feel free to skip this step if you don't want to season them. I'm using a nice non-stick 10-inch saute pan with just a touch of oil at the bottom and sauteing up half of my chicken breast. This chicken breast will make quite a bit later, so I'm saving that for later. When I saute my chicken breast, I want to make sure I don't cook it all the way through quite yet because it's going to stay in the pan. Now hit this with just a small amount of your onions and your carrots. Again, those amounts are totally up to you. I like to make sure that they're around 50-50 just so that way they're even. After you sauteed up your onions and your carrots and your onions are slightly translucent, add in your garlic and your ginger. You don't want to add in your garlic or ginger too early or you will have a chance of burning it since it is the smallest part of your omurice. Now after those have sauteed for just a minute, add in as much rice as you want. I like to make sure that when I add my rice, it's about the same amount of rice as the other filling. Now you want to make sure you do break this rice up, and since my rice was slightly warm out of the rice cooker, it didn't break up too well. Now I'm using ketchup for my omurice, but feel free to use demi-glace sauce, which is another common component in omurice, but that flavor is totally up to you. I really like the way the ketchup tastes in this versus demi-glace sauce because I feel it is lighter and tangier, and I really do like the flavor here. The amount of ketchup that you add is personal preference, but I like to make sure that I add enough to where all of my rice gets fully coated as I finish cooking it. You don't want to saturate with your rice with ketchup because then you're just going to be eating ketchup that's held together with rice, but just enough to where all of the rice granules look like they've been fully coated with ketchup. Give this a final taste test to make sure it's good with salt and pepper, and then place this into your bowl of choice just to make sure it stays warm before we go to finish off this omelet. Now in that same pan, after cleaning it, hit this with a touch of pan spray and bring this over a medium heat, and then dump in your 3 whisked eggs. Now the eggs don't actually need to cook for very long, especially since I want that creamier center in the middle. I only cook my eggs for around 2 minutes, making sure that the top doesn't fully congeal. Once that's cooked, I'm ready to start adding in my rice. Now, the rice that I had added to this ended up being far too much, so keep that in mind when you're trying to fold over your omelet. I even removed some of the rice in anticipation for this omelet not coming together, and as I struggled to fold over the omelet for the amount of rice that I had, Gandalf and Lucian ran through the house like something was chasing them, and I continued to fold over my omelet to make this omurice. Now you can see where I went overboard with the rice, but I was able to finally tuck this in. After you have your omelet tucked in, grab yourself a plate, placing it on top of the omelet, and then flip it over onto your plate. Now you can slightly shape this while it's on the plate. Feel free to do that. It doesn't have to be perfect. I ended up using a paper towel to kind of clean up my plate and shape my omurice, so that way you can't really tell that I messed up that badly. And you can see there are some cracks in my omurice, and that's because I made my egg a little too thick. Now to cover that up, I am adding an additional amount of ketchup, and in this case, you could use demi-glace as well. Make sure you garnish it with a hefty amount of green onions because green onions are life. And there it is, the chicken omurice from Mob Psycho 100 and every anime ever. And before we hit 100, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, Skillshare. One of my favorite things about Skillshare is how targeted a lot of the classes are. They have them easily broken down into courses and sections, so this way you can follow along at your own pace without being overwhelmed, and it really makes the entire learning process super simple. Most recently, I've been following Thomas Frank's guide on productivity, who is another fellow YouTuber, and I really love the way he lays everything out for his classes. Being able to go through a class like this and learn about productivity tips without really having to search outside of the site really makes it super easy to just learn all the things you want to learn. I mean, it's just all right there. Even someone like me who's been cooking his entire life can still learn a ton from the cooking content over on Skillshare. And the best part is you get all of this at less than $10 a month with the yearly membership. Not only that, but the first 1,000 people to use my link down below are going to get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership that gives you access to all of these classes. I consider myself a forever student, and using Skillshare is going to allow me to continue to learn and grow and become knowledgeable on a ton of different topics. So make sure to check out the links down below and get yourself started on Skillshare so you can start learning whatever it is you're interested in. Thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. There it is, guys, the omurice from Mob Psycho. This showed up really early in the series, and as someone who'd never seen Mob Psycho, I regret not watching it sooner. Not only is it an awesome anime, but it has a ton of food in it, which I'm probably gonna have to make a bunch of because omurice. I'm just gonna go right in the middle with this. Look at the color from the, can you focus? There it is. Look at the color from the ketchup. It's super red. Now, if you use demi-glace, obviously it's not gonna be red, it's probably gonna be brown, but I want it with ketchup. It's making my mouth water. The rice on the inside is super tangy and tart from that ketchup. It's still really creamy from the omelet as well. The chicken is really nice in there. The vegetables give it this really nice freshness. It is slightly sweet from the ketchup and the onions as well. It's just all around such an easy meal to make, and I mean, it's super filling. This is a lot of food. I don't know if I'll hit 100% after eating this before my workout, but we're gonna freaking try. And the way you can hit 100% is by checking out the links below for really cool merch. My name is CHEFPK. Get subscribed and remember, keep playing with your food. I'm gonna just go watch Mob.